It's hard to believe, but the Hell in a Cell match concept isn't far off turning a quarter of a century old. They grow up so fast, don't they? One of WWE's best original creations, the Cell has retained much of its power over the decades, even if its history is a little bit patchy in places. Reputations have been made, titles won, iconic characters debuted, and careers ended inside the Cell, which has changed significantly over the years, growing from 16 feet and 2 tons to 20 feet and 5 tons. The perverse, vile, diabolical structure even has its own namesake pay-per-view event, demonstrating the box office appeal of watching wrestlers meet each other in brutal conditions that typically culminate in a level of violence that ensures scores are settled and feuds come to an end. We've had almost 50 of the things go down at this point, with singles, tags, handicap, and multi-man offerings, as well as I Quit and Falls Count Anywhere additions. Relatively recently, the company's women took their first forays into the Cell, their efforts justifying their main event billing. And as we look forward to more enclosed anarchy, let's take a look at some of the facts, stats, and behind-the-scenes Hell in a Cell stories you may not be aware of. My name's Sam Driver from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 things you didn't know about Hell in a Cell. Join us! Number 10. The origins of Hell. While traditional steel cage matches had been WWE staples dating back decades, the company didn't introduce the roofed version until October 1997's Bad Blood pay-per-view. The idea to put a top on it wasn't something WWE just dreamed up out of thin air, but rather they took inspiration from a bout that happened 14 years prior. In another company, no less. Influential backstage figure and tennis racket aficionado Jim Cornette first proposed the idea of the Cell based on his memory of the last Battle of Atlanta. The last Battle of Atlanta was a cage match between Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer, which took place in Georgia Championship Wrestling in October of 1983. That match, which was won by Rich, was the culmination of a deeply personal 2-year feud, and its reputation grew in mythic proportions afterward. For the Hell in a Cell, WWE also took inspiration from WCW's War Games and the type of cage match that was favored in Memphis, with the cage allowing for combat in the ringside area rather than confining participants strictly to the squared circle. The last Battle of Atlanta match was thought to be lost to the sands of time before WWE unearthed and uploaded it to the WWE Network in 2016. Number 9. Career-ending Hell. The Cell is often touted as a structure where the careers, even lives, of those brave enough to enter it will be altered forever. A potential career ender, the Cell's brutality was particularly on display in the earlier blood and big bump-filled belters. While no wrestler's career has actually ended inside the Devil's Playground, one WWE referee wasn't quite so lucky. Veteran official Tim White was the man in charge of Triple H and Chris Jericho's Judgment Day 2002 Hell in a Cell grudge match, his duties for the evening extending to taking a wicked fall into the steel. Unfortunately, the bump wasn't as smooth as planned, and White hit his right shoulder, which he previously had surgery on, hard. An MRI discovered a torn rotator cuff, and Timmy underwent surgery, sidelining him for many months. He came back in time to referee another Jericho match against Christian at WrestleMania 20, but he re-injured the knackered limb on the final 3 count. After that, he was forced to retire from active referee duty. There have been other much scarier moments that look to have caused serious injury in other Cell matches, but it was something fairly innocuous that ended up taking someone out of the game for good. Number 8. Trying like hell to win. Perhaps no wrestler in WWE history has benefited more from being associated with the Cell than Mick Foley. Mrs. Foley's baby boy cemented his legacy during his infamous 1998 King of the Ring Cell War with The Undertaker, doing things and putting his body through abuse that would ensure he be immortalized on the highlight reel for eternity. Then he bowed out of full-time competition with another classic against Triple H at No Way Out 2000. Though those 2 matches were incredible and enhanced Foley's reputation beyond compare, it's worth noting that he lost both of the matches. Taker tombstoned Mankind in the former, while Triple H pedigreed Cactus Jack in the latter. And let's also not forget that those weren't Foley's only forays into the Cell, as he had 2 other little-remembered Cell matches. Before and after his meeting with the Dead Man, Foley competed in a pair of Cell matches on Raw. In the first, he teamed with Kane to lose to Taker and Steve Austin, and in the second, he fought to a no contest with the Big Red Machine. So the next time you complain about how WWE are watering the gimmick down, keep in mind that the second, third, and fourth Cell matches all happened within 2 months of each other, and 2 of those were on free TV. Number 7. To hell with the old rings. Mick Foley's audacious one-man show at King of the Ring is something that cannot and should not ever be duplicated. The hardcore legend risked serious life-altering injury when he was thrown off and then through the top of the cell, the two bumps causing great concern for Foley's friends, family, co-workers, and superiors. After the match, Mick was asked to tone it down and never attempt anything like that again, but those weren't the only safeguards WWE put in place. Witnessing Foley's physical condition following the spectacle, Vince McMahon made the call to change the rings that WWE used. For years, the company had used hard rings with little give so that they didn't appear to bounce on television. That's all well and good for the cameras, but it was torture for the wrestlers who felt like they were falling onto concrete. As a consequence of Foley's performance, WWE decided to get new rings, which helped facilitate a higher risk style and would, in theory at least, result in less wear and tear and/or big injuries. While I'm sure Foley probably wishes he himself could have landed onto a bed of marshmallows, he can take some comfort in the fact that his recklessness made things safer in the long run for his contemporaries. Number 6. High Definition Hell. The Hell in a Cell structure itself has changed considerably through the years. It was originally just a bigger, badder, but slightly flimsy in places silver steel cage, and now it's about 80 feet tall, red, and looks sturdy enough to withstand your average wrecking ball. The first major cell upgrade, if you really want to call it that, took place at Unforgiven 2006, where Triple H and Shawn Michaels squared off with the McMahons and Big Show in a taller, wider, reinforced cage. So why did WWE decide all of a sudden to change the cell? Some hypothesized that it was either to lessen the expectation for a big bump or to make big bumps even more spectacular, but neither of those things happened to be the case. At the time, WWE were preparing to transition their programming to HD and felt as though the old cell, having been in play for close to a decade at that point, may look a little raggedy in high definition. WWE didn't actually go HD for more than a year, but they were getting themselves ready. It's a shame they weren't already HD at Unforgiven, mind. I think we all wanted to see Vince get introduced to the world's largest arse at 60 FPS. Number 5. Hell Takes a Vacation. WWE certainly got a lot of use out of the cell structure, enlisting it for 7 matches and 1 kennel from Hell in the first 3 years of its existence. Since its inception, there's been a cell match every single year besides one. 2001, to be precise, because there were no cell matches that year. WWE didn't book a Hell in a Cell match for almost 18 months between the Armageddon 2006 man and Judgment Day 2002's Triple H Jericho blow-off. To be fair, WWE had a lot on their plate at the time, with the launch of the XFL, WrestleMania 17, buying WCW, incorporating ECW, the subsequent invasion, the mooted draft split, and about 50 other things dividing Vince McMahon's attention. There were several big feuds which could have used the cell, such as Steve Austin and Triple H's early year rivalry, but WWE chose not to employ it. Interestingly, when the cell returned from its vacation, it clearly came with a new edict that nobody take what had become the customary big bump off the top or from the side of it, as WWE tried to recondition fans not to expect such risky stunts. Number 4. Unseen Hell. The Hell in a Cell is, or at least should be, a gimmick that's reserved for major occasions like pay-per-views, preferably with a world title on the line, or at least to settle a bitter dispute. And the vast majority of them have been on pay-per-view, from the eponymous show that began in 2009 to SummerSlam, WrestleMania, Survivor Series, and beyond. Interestingly, the Cell's never made an appearance at a Royal Rumble, but as mentioned earlier, there were 2 Cell matches on Raw in the summer of '98, but they weren't real Cell matches, more like extended angles, with fans and the company themselves tending to gloss over them. One even more obscure match took place not on Raw, but after WWE's flagship went off the air as a dark match treat for fans in the arena. It may have taken place when the live transmission had ceased broadcasting, but first photographs and then snippets of video footage of the contest emerged. The match in question was a star-studded affair, with WWE champion John Cena defending against CM Punk, Alberto Del Rio, Jack Swagger, and Dolph Ziggler. Full of star power maybe, but it lasted just 1 minute for every competitor in it. Cena hitting Swagger with the AA to retain after 5 minutes. Number 3. Longer Than Hell. That non-televised 5-minute cell is certainly the exception to a lot of cell rules, especially when it comes to match length. Cell matches are typically epic affairs and routinely clock in at over 20, sometimes 30 minutes. Indeed, if you're sitting down to watch a cell match, set aside at least a half hour, factoring in pre-match build, entrances, and the like. Outside of the TV cell bouts, the shortest pay-per-view cell match was The Undertaker's dismal victory over Big Boss Man at WrestleMania 15, which clocked in at a shade under 10 minutes, yet somehow managed to feel at least 4 times longer. As for the longest cell match in WWE history, well, that honor belongs to Triple H and Shawn Michaels, 2 cell match veterans who fought for a mammoth 47 minutes, 26 seconds at Bad Blood 2004. The two had faced each other in long matches in the past, including a 38-minute 3 Stages of Hell but no cell match at Armageddon 2002, and an almost 30-minute no contest on an episode of Raw a year later, but the cell match took things to another level. Speaking of Triple H and Shawn Michaels, whenever they team up as DX inside the cell, they're victorious, and whenever the Cerebral Assassin enters as world champion, he always retains. Number 2, HELL-PATITIS C. Before WWE went PG, a Hell in a Cell match was almost guaranteed to be a bloodbath, with multiple participants usually getting collar in order to sell the brutality of the gimmick. That extended beyond those actually competing in the match too, as referees and even managers situated outside the cage could end up springing a gusher. Bob Orton Jr. got in on the act at Armageddon 2005, getting busted open as he cheered on his son Randy in his battle with The Undertaker. Nothing too wrong with an old pro gigging himself in order to add to the drama of a pay-per-view main event, but things took an unsavory turn shortly after. It came to light that Orton had previously tested positive for hepatitis C, which can be transmitted via contact with an infected person's blood. Even worse, head of talent relations John Laurinaitis knew about it and neglected to disclose the information to the Phenom. When Taker found out about it via a WWE doctor, he was understandably furious, tearing into Johnny Ace and the Cowboy for putting his health at risk. It wasn't terribly too long later that Bob Orton Jr. received his marching orders. And number 1, Hellish Records. The Undertaker may have come out of Armageddon 05 wanting to throttle someone, but the Cell has been very, very good to the dead man over the years. Though he may be more synonymous with his famed WrestleMania winning streak and other rarer gimmick bouts like Casket and Buried Alive matches, Taker has been in, by far, more Hell in a Cell matches than anybody else. The Phenom has stepped into Satan's playground 14 times, including the very first one in 1997. His last Cell appearance was a victory over Shane McMahon at WrestleMania 32. The next nearest to him is Triple H with 9 cell matches to his name. Competing in cell matches across 3 decades, Taker also has the most wins inside the cage, coming out victorious 8 times, which is 2 more than Hunter has managed. On the flip side, he also has the most cell match losses with 6, twice as many as Triple H, Randy Orton, Foley, CM Punk, and Shane McMahon, who all have 3. And guess who handed them one of their cell match losses? There are several superstars who remain undefeated inside the cell, though a bunch of them only have a 1-0 record. The most impressive Hell in a Cell undefeated streaks belong to Brock Lesnar, Batista, and Kevin Owens, who have 2 wins and 0 losses to their credit. Shane McMahon, conversely, has been unsuccessful on 3 separate occasions, the big rich loser.